Thank you for your patience. Really quickly, I wanted to go through who here is here for the first time? Okay, so a lot of you. So a little quick spiel about PDF. PDF stands for Professional Development Forum. We've been running this for the last 12 years. Jeff, the founder at the back, he's been running this. So these are free events, and we believe that people, techniques and tools, they should be free and accessible to anyone who wishes to have it. And that's pretty much our mission. And everyone at the back, we're all volunteers, and we run free events monthly. So it's usually on the third Monday of the month, and today we're lucky to have Patrick Wong. He will be talking about he will be going through how to take control of your career and get the job you want. So we try to go through this usually in under an hour and leave questions afterwards. So without any further ado, please welcome Patrick Wong.
Hello, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. So it's pretty funny. So Jeff, I met him about a year ago. And then I think in the first day he's like, look, I'd love for you to come speak, so it's been a year. In terms of that, but the funny part was I think he wanted me to talk because I had, I guess years of experience within the industry. And I don't think it's necessarily the years per se, but it's the fact that I've had a lot of, I guess, ups and downs in my career, and I've probably made quite a lot of bad decisions. So it's through those experiences and all that I feel that I can provide a lot of good information and sort of advice for people so they don't fall through the same, I guess, traps. So essentially what I'm looking to do tonight is essentially run through, I guess, the basic steps of recruitment from a candidate perspective. So from you guys. So who here tonight, who here is actively looking for a job? Okay. Who here is passively looking for a job? And when they're passively, it's like they're open about hearing about opportunities, but they're not like on Seek or they're not on job boards every day. Okay. So so between those two, there's people that are, I guess, are open to opportunities. So what I want to do is I guess run through the following points. Be good about my clicker, and then we'll go from there. And so really quickly a bit about myself. So essentially, I studied media and communications and psychology. I guess like most people, I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I did that. Pretty random combination. I ended up doing graphic design. After a while, I realized I didn't like doing that, so I moved into event management. And I did event management at Sydney University. So I was actually involved in the career fairs for students. When I was involved in those fairs, I actually met a lot of recruiters that were actually helping the students go through, and that was something I found quite appealing. So I asked them, how do you get into that? So they said, you need to get into essentially recruitment. And then essentially 10 years on, I've been in, I guess, recruitment manager positions, I've been in HR positions, and I've also been in, I guess, account management positions at the moment where I am now for the last 5 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started now. And so step one is focusing on what you are looking for. Sorry, actually, before I begin, we're going to talk about what you're going to be sorry, let me just go back. So we're going to be focused on just for a bit of agenda, right? So we're going to be focused on the key element is like why you're looking for work, or the things that you probably should consider before you even start. The next point then we're going to be talking about is the tools. So what you need to essentially look for a job. And then after that we're going to go about how to apply for jobs. And then we're going to talk about the interview preparation, and then the do's and don'ts of the interview, and then hopefully we've got some quick tips. So hopefully that's okay with everyone. Cool. So first of all, what I guess the key point is when you're looking for work, so there's a lot of you here that said you're actively looking for work. What you want to consider is quite a few of these things first before you even get started, right? Because it's kind of like anything, if you're going to go on a journey, you want to know why you're going on that journey, or I guess what the end goal is. So the first question is why, right? Is it because we're not happy? If we're not happy, then let's break it down to what are the factors we're not happy. Is it because we're looking for a pay rise? Is it looking for career opportunities? Those are the things that you need to consider. The easiest way that I could probably say in terms of whether you should look for a job, the simplest way is two things. You've got to be earning and learning. That's the simplest way I can break it down. So if you're doing both, that's a good thing. If you're doing one, so if you're learning something but you may not be getting the money you want, that's not bad. If you're earning money but you're not necessarily learning anything, that's also not bad depending on your situation. But if you're not getting any of them, then that's maybe when you potentially could start considering, do I need to start looking for work? Expectations. So in regards to expectations, this is what you need to consider, I guess, for your benefit as well, in terms of the work or the roles that you are going for. So in terms of, okay, let's talk about, say, money. So some people may be going, hey, look, I'm looking to leave my role because I want a pay increase, right? I want a salary increase. You need to, I guess, to a degree, be realistic of the expectations you have either within your company or outside of the company. So there's a few things you need to consider in terms of what the market is actually paying, in terms of whether you can actually go at it. So okay, I'll give you an example, right? So a few years ago, actually quite a while ago, one of my mentors, he kind of had a chat with me and he goes, look, cool, in terms of your future, your career, what do you want to do? And then he was like, so what money do you want to earn? And like, for example, I just chucked him about, I want to earn, for example, 150K, right? And he was like, okay, cool. So can you actually get 150K in your current role? And then I actually thought about it and I was like, actually I can't. It's like, I'm on this level, and for me to get up to that level, the expectations would mean I either need to get paid more than, say, the HR director or more than the CEO or something. So then that's another factor you need to consider, whether you can get it within your role or if you need to look else elsewhere. And in terms of expectations, I guess another aspect is your career. So there's a lot of people that want to improve and progress their career. So whether it's you're starting at a certain level, you want to move up into a manager or a team leader role. The things you need to, I guess, be realizing that it's great to have those ambitions, but you also need to be aware of your own capabilities and then what you need to do to actually improve them. And I'm not saying anyone can't do what, but essentially it's like, for example, if I wanted to say as well, I want to be the manager of 20 people, then I need to look back at myself and go, well, have I actually managed anyone? Well, it's like, well, at the moment, I'm not managing anyone. So how do I expect to get promoted into a role managing people when I don't actually have that experience? So that's, I guess, another example in terms of the expectation you actually need to think about as well. Motivations. So this is very important. It's quite funny. From my perspective as, I guess, a recruiter on a day-to-day basis in my team, the number one question we always ask people is, what are your motivations? And this, surprisingly not, stumps a lot of people. It's because it's kind of like, and again, it goes back to what I was saying before, people in such a rush and they feel like they need to look for work. Again, you need to figure out why you're looking for work, and motivations is a big part. Is it because, again, is it the money aspect? Is it the career aspect? Is it family reasons? Is it having that work-life flexibility? So those are sort of your motivations. You need to think about what's important to yourself, and then from then, that will help you guide in terms of your job search, and I'll tell you how it's kind of incorporated later. And then goals. So this is, again, something in terms of what you want to achieve in your work career. So these are things that also, again, you need to ask yourself what you want to achieve, and then at the same time, potentially reverse engineer it how you're going to get there, and use that towards, I guess, why you're looking for work. So from my perspective, right, because I guess, who has been in an interview, say in the last month? Okay, cool. So I'm not sure if you guys all have been in interviews, right? But so say you're in an interview, and usually people will ask you, what do you want to achieve in your next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? To a degree, it's kind of get an idea of where you want to head, but at the same time, it's quite broad and it's quite vague. Anything can happen, right? There could be asteroids falling on Earth, so we won't have our 5-year plans. And personal situations might change as well, so those plans might go whack. From my perspective, I think what I like to, I guess, recommend, and what I usually suggest, is thinking 2 steps ahead. And in particular, this is very important for people that are looking for, I guess, looking to leave their current job because they're not happy. So usually what happens is that, and say people are not happy in a situation for whatever reason, one of the ideas is that they want to get out and look for work straight away. They're not really thinking about where they're going to go. It's like, I just want to get out of here and I'll kind of take the next job that comes to me. So what happens is they leave, they find another job, and then essentially what happens is they'll realize they're actually in the same situation they were, but just in a different environment. So what you want to think about is how are you going to think 2 steps ahead. So if I jump to this job, can it get me, for example, if I'm talking about career progression, if I'm moving over here, can this company get me the career progression I want? That's your second step. Because if it can't get you here, and you're moving sideways and you can't move up, you're pretty much in the same situation, right? But you just left your job, you've left your friends, and you've got to start back from scratch. Cool. And then in terms of so all the things I've been kind of talking about, the key thing what you want to do is create a list of priorities and stack rank them. This is also something that's very important before you start, because this is ultimately going to determine how you're going to look for work and the type of roles you're going to look for. So whether it is, so it's quite funny, right? You got the stats in terms of that. So number one is, I think why people look to leave is because of appreciation in their current role, whether they get that appreciation or not, or whether they're getting the recognition. But if that's important to you, that's your number one. If it is, family, if it's living close to home, working close to home, that you put it as your priority. So that's kind of how you want to, I guess, create those stats. So that's step one in terms of what I feel that you need to do before you start looking out for work. In terms of the next step. So the next step is your tools. So these are the steps. So number one is the resume and the CV. Everyone loves the whole process of updating their CVs, yeah? So this is the funny part, right? So I will try my best to kind of, I guess, give examples of what maybe not to do and what to do. But I could probably spend another hour alone just on the resume part. And I think the first time I met Jeff, I thought he was looking for a job. So I got him to send me his CV, and then I started going through it. And then he he let me talk for 5 minutes and said, "I'm actually not looking." So that was kind of embarrassing. Cool. So in regards to the resume, right? The key number one thing for your resume essentially is to get you a meeting. That's all it is. It's a piece of paper that gets you the next opportunity in the job stage for you to explore opportunities. It's not who you are, it's not a reflection of you, because ultimately, when people look at your resume, if they don't know who you are, it's nothing personal. Right? They don't know you essentially from a bar of soap. And it's something where I think in this day and age, there's something that we get quite caught up, because when we're applying for work, we're sending out CVs, which is an extension of ourselves to a degree. This is my achievements, this is what I've done for years, and then when we don't get the callbacks, that's when it gets quite a bit down. So just remember, all it is to get you the next opportunity where you can then sell yourself. So I'm going to try to put an example here of a not so good resume. So here it is. So in terms of, this is the first page, right? So the interesting part with resumes is that looking at resumes for over 10 years, the numbers that we've seen, it's kind of like recruiters and I guess people that look at them, you got to understand they're quite lazy, because essentially we've had to go through maybe say, anywhere between 200 CVs a day to even more, depending on the situation. So there's only going to be so much attention span that we're going to be able to contribute towards CVs. So you guys have heard that sort of stereotype where people look at resumes for 5 seconds. That's kind of true, if not a bit less, depending on the situation. So the reason why I bring that up is because this first page is actually, to me, one of the most important aspects of your resume, because this is kind of like your real estate. This is what you want to kind of have to essentially get people to keep on reading. If essentially a lot of resumes can be lost on the first page because they haven't liked what they saw, or it doesn't read very well, or for whatever reasons. There's a lot of reasons why, unfortunately, if you're going to be dealing with certain people, they've only got a certain amount of time to it. So the whole adage as well is that people put, I guess, actually quite a bit of important information at the end of it. You got to remember as well, sometimes people might not even go to the end of your resume. So for example, in this one, the reason why I put this up is because, so you've got here a career objective. And look, I'll be quite honest, from my perspective of 10 years, I've never read any of these paragraphs. That's me personally, and again, I state, I guess anything that I say tonight is my own, I guess, opinion going through, I guess, the experience. It might not be everyone, but to me, I actually don't read these, and to be honest, in the last, I don't know how long, I've probably read about 5 cover letters in my whole life. So, and that's, I can probably say most of our recruiters won't actually, or most people that actually look for jobs, unless they're specifically asked you for a cover letter, do not waste your time with that. I appreciate your question. If you don't mind writing it down, and then we can talk at the end. But, and that's my perspective, right? And there's certain industries that do require cover letters and such, but I guess from my general day-to-day, I've never read one. And it's never actually been detrimental in terms of whether I look past that or not. And then the other section here I've got is skills and attributes. It's good and bad, but in saying that, the problem with this is it's quite vague. So if I actually took these bit for bit, and you can't, apologies if you can't read it, but I just want to kind of give you the idea. If I actually take these down bit for bit, I could probably cut and paste these skills and attributes and put them in, I guess, any other CV. So the thing is, the key thing that I kind of want to point out is that if you're going to put information here, you want to make it that sells you as a person and sell you a bit more that's going to make you differentiate. Because, like, from my perspective, I have not read anything on this first page. And again, that's just me. But that's what I mean. It's like I will need to look to the next page to kind of get information that I'll be looking for that's a little bit more appealing. So the next page here has got, for example, the reason I'm putting examples is because these are some little things that you can change very quickly and very easily. So for example, you can see here, there's the writing, there's the red sort of underlines, which ultimately mean there's spelling mistakes. So as funny as that sounds, you do not understand how many CVs we get on a daily basis that still have spelling mistakes. And to me, this is the #1 easiest thing you can do. All you literally need to do is spell check and go through it. But the fact that we get people that don't even do that, that almost shows how much effort they've actually put into putting in their resume. And especially if they've gone to the effort of updating a resume, the last thing they all have to do is a spell check. They can't even do that. It kind of implies a bit more. So that's something. And in terms of, if you look here at the spacing, he's kind of put a lot of sort of paragraphs here, and it's wasted space. So again, it's kind of like your retail. You want to use up as much of this space as possible. And then, okay, so the next page, what we've then got now is different fonts, and as you can see, different bullet points. Again, it's kind of like, what happens is that you'll get a lot of people that, when they update their CVs, they only update the last role. So what happens is that they may have had, 5 years experience, 10 years experience. They're only going to update the last part, and then they don't update the rest. So then for, this person may have done this, 4 years ago, and they didn't even look at it, but they didn't realize that something as simple as the text and the font is not even consistent with the other pages. So again, that's something that's really easy to kind of fix. And then you've got here, again, a lot of the spacing wise, this can all be consolidated and kind of used up. And then it's more about, so have you guys heard of the thing about CVs need to be a certain number of pages, otherwise I don't read them? To me, again, that's quite false. I'm never going to go, unless a CV's 20 pages, I'm not even going to read any 20 pages, but if they're going to be valuable, I'll look at the first at least 5 pages. To me, the worst you can do sometimes, and it's dependent on some industries, but if you've only got a resume that's 1 or 2 pages, you've got to think about, have you sold yourself then in the 1 or 2 pages? If you've got 1 whole page that's dedicated to this, which is essentially, from my perspective, not very valuable, that means you've only got 1 other page of actual information that is relevant. So from my perspective, look, there is no sort of limit in terms of the size of your resume, but you've got to have key quality information in there that's going to reflect you to the best of your ability for that particular job. So what I did is I sat down with him, I got an understanding of what roles he was looking for, and then this is what we came up with in terms of the formatting. So this is something that, so this is my example of a good resume, and it's a pretty straightforward one. It's very simple, but this is what I kind of recommend. So what you've got here is a career summary. So this is very important for people, again, when they've got a very short attention span. So what you want to put here is, I guess, list down your experience of each role, how long you've been and which companies you're in. So because if I've got 5 seconds to look at a resume, I can look at him right now and go, okay, cool, so he's currently working for an IT company that's a global organization. Previously, before that, he was in government for 4 years, and then prior to that, he was in NAB, in the banking industry. He's been in a role for 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and currently about a year. So that already tells me this person's got tenure, He's worked for large organizations, and he's worked for large sort of companies or in different industries. So that's something to me that's going to be a very quick read, and something that I can go from that, is that what I want to read more? Yes, then good. No, then I can move on as well. He's got the experience around his technical skill set. Previously, he had that at the end of the page. Again, that's assuming that they've actually gone to the end of the page to see it. But if that's important, then that's something they may need to know. And then you've got his list of education here as well. And then this is his role. So as you can see here, the information is all used up on the pages more, the space has been used up, the formatting is consistent, and it's got very key and very easy sort of ways of key achievements and roles and responsibilities. So from a visual perspective, this is a lot easier to kind of read and understand. As you can see, it keeps going. So that way, it's condensed the information that he had in 2 pages, which originally was in his original CV, I think about 5 pages. And that's purely from spacing. Cool. All right, another key tool to have is LinkedIn. So who here, I guess, uses their LinkedIn account? Okay. Who here would actually consider using it for work, to actually find work? Okay, good. So everyone's relatively on the same page. So I guess this day and age, LinkedIn is a very powerful tool, especially if you are looking for opportunities. And the really good thing about it is that once you've set this up, this is in the background. You don't have to do anything else with it. Aside from, I guess, adding more and more connections and people that you may want to get to know, you don't have to do anything else, because what's happened is that you're going to have people within the recruitment industry, headhunters, talent acquisition people, they're going to be looking for people on LinkedIn. So if they can find your profile there, you've kind of already done that side of business. So that's working in the background for you while you're, I guess, essentially actively looking for work outside. So I'm just going to give some examples of the do's and don'ts of a LinkedIn profile. Cool. So this person over here is actually one of my colleagues. I've had numerous conversations with her about this because she loves it, because it makes her look, pretty, which is true. But essentially, it's not the most professional picture on a LinkedIn profile. And a few examples I can point out is that you've got her best mate's blonde hair cut out, and she's in a car. So from that perspective, if you're, I guess, getting headhunted by someone with that profile, and not to say, and trust me, she's one of the best recruiters, so it's nothing against her ability, but I guess from a perception perspective, are you going to take someone as seriously as someone that looks like they're ready for business? And that reflects back on you from a candidate perspective. I'm not sure if people here, if they've got, I've seen a lot of photos where they've taken it, in the, I guess, trains, and you've got the lovely chairs at the background, things like that. Or you've got people that are on a beach and things like that. And that's great, right? But you've got to remember, LinkedIn is a professional sort of forum as opposed to Facebook. This is not Facebook. So that's why you want to keep it as professional as possible. And then the other thing is not putting a photo. That's probably even worse, because as you can see here, you've got someone that's, you're looking, if I'm going to headhunt someone, ideally would like to know, who I'm looking at, or, see there. But if you haven't got that, then I guess in this instance, this would be better. And then here, in terms of the content, they've listed the responsibilities, but they haven't really put much, I guess, detail or anything. So it's kind of like, from my perspective, that's great. I know which company and I know what they're doing. Well, I know their title, but I don't actually know what they're doing or there's any key achievements. So if we've already updated your resume, all you need to do is cut and paste a few of those responsibilities and key achievements and add it in. So it's a very quick fix. So I'm going to give an example of something that's quite ideal. Not sucking up at all, but so here we've got Mr. Jeff Wang. As you can see, lovely photo. We've got some power. But you've got here as well. Here, it's his catch line and what he's looking to do, right? You've got, let's see, you've got the connections, and then you've got the section here about the about him. So this is quite important, because this is where your sell is. This is where you can kind of promote yourself and tell people what you're looking to achieve or what you're looking to do. So that's something that's quite important. From there, you can see he's quite active in terms of articles and activity. So that's something that's quite important as well, in terms of if you are looking to stay, I guess, relevant within the market. And in terms of the experience, you've got, you can see, I guess, the experience and what he's done in each of one of them. So that's kind of an example of a LinkedIn profile. And in saying that, it's not really hard to achieve that. You know what I mean? It's something that can be done within an hour and can be done quite quickly once you've updated your current resume. And then on top of that, he's got and recommendations is also good as long as, and skills and endorsements. So in terms of the recommendations, that's something I would highly recommend you do, I guess, when you've worked with people, right? Because ultimately, the best people that are going to vouch for you are the ones that are sitting right next to you. They know what you do on a daily basis. So it's like, if they can, I guess, help promote you, that's something in the industry that's going to be quite important, because you never know. Say, for example, if I knew Helen, and then she knows Jeff, and she can vouch for Jeff, that's going to be quite important for me, and it's going to mean a lot more than someone that I wouldn't know in that sense. Okay, so networking connections. So this one is actually really important as well, especially in this day and age in terms of when you're looking for work. So out of here, who has got a job from a friend or a family member? Okay, cool. In terms of that, so there are quite a few people. In terms of that, this is going to be one of the most powerful ways to look for work. Like, without fail, even before I've even updated the resume or the LinkedIn profile, the first thing I would do if I'm looking for opportunities is to talk to my contacts and networks within the industry and see if there are any opportunities. You'd be surprised how many friends or family members or how many of their friends might be in positions or companies that you actually want to join, and the fact that there's within a 1 to 2 connection of that will be a big difference. It's a big difference from when they know you've got someone that's in a senior position or a position of authority that can promote and say, hey, this person's really good, as opposed to, all right, we found this guy on Seek, we don't know how he is, we're just going to have to go through the whole process, and 5 interviews into it, you're still interviewing. So this is really important. So this is, and this falls back into your LinkedIn profiles as well, because if you can, I guess, keep your LinkedIn profile quite up to date in terms of your connections, you can then use your LinkedIn profile to see where the people are, or where your friends are. So for example, say I wanted to join IBM. Off the bat, right, I can type up IBM and it'll come up with a list of who I know. Before you know it, I know Thurinder works there. Okay, cool. Hey Thurinder, how you going? There's an opportunity at IBM that I'm interested. Can you vouch for me for it? He may not, but assuming he does, then that would hopefully ideally help the process a lot more than me going onto I guess IBM's website, me going onto Seek and then applying for the job, and then I'm one of the many thousands or hundreds of people that have applied, and I might not get looked at. And then plan and strategy. So again, this is how you're going to utilize your, I guess, the tools that you do have, and what your plan and attack is. So what I usually try to recommend is, once you've got everything else down pat, you want to figure out how you're going to look for work. So whether it is connecting with people that within the industry, whether it is going on job boards, whether it's going on Seek, how it is, that's your plan of attack, and you want to identify, I guess, what's the best way it's going to work for you from a time perspective and also planning perspective. Cool. And then one of the biggest things is attitude. As corny as it sounds, there are so many people that we have hired purely because their attitude overshone other people's abilities. It's like and you've heard that. I'm sure you guys have heard that sort of adage where, in terms of skills, I guess, technical skills, a lot of things can be trained and can be learnt on the job, but you can't teach attitude. So that's one of the things that is very important. So if you are going to be looking for work, whether it's actively, passively, or anything, you have to have, I guess, one, belief in yourself, and also, hopefully with all the other things, knowing how you're going to go about and get it. If you've got an attitude of where you feel like you're not going to get a job, or you're not going to achieve this, or you're not going to get caught up, to a degree, you've almost, if you've kind of given up on yourself at the beginning, you almost shot yourself in the foot. So you've got to have a really, and it's easier said than done, and I can't stress enough, but you need to have a positive attitude when you are looking for opportunities, because it is going to be tough. It's not easy. I will, I guess, with some of the advice, I will hopefully try and make it a little bit easier. But in saying that, it is a tough process. So you need to have the right attitude and able to keep going for it. Otherwise, you may stay, I guess, in the situation that you're currently in. Okay. So the next part is applying for work. So what we're going to do is, we've got our tools. So we've got our resume, we've got our LinkedIn profile update, we've got, I guess, our connections. You need to carry out the plan and strategy and stick to it. There is no point doing all of that and then all of a sudden, after all that, go straight to the job boards, or just give up straight away within the first week. You need to give it a proper go and carry it out to see how effective it can be. talking to who you know and checking with connections. So in terms of that, that's the part where you need to start actively calling out people. And in these situations, right, some people are a bit afraid to call because they may realize they've known a high school friend or someone that they haven't talked to in 5 years, or in a company or a position that they may not think. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. It is kind of human nature where if there is a connection there where people are generally going to be more open to helping others out. But you just need to ask a question. If you don't ask, you don't get. Okay, so this is the interesting one, right? To seek or not to seek. So if you are looking for work, put your hand up here if one of the first things is going to seek. Okay. In terms of going to seek, put up your hand if you have successfully gotten a job from Seek straight off the bat. Okay, so, which is not bad, right? Maybe you need to know some of those people. But essentially, if you're talking about a crowd of, say, I'm not sure, maybe about 70, 80 or so, that's about 5 people here that have gotten a job from Seek. If you think about that, it's quite low. And there's quite a lot of reasons why, right? Because in terms of Seek, it is good for certain avenues, but it's good in a way that you'd use it. And the way I would really use it is a form of identifying where the jobs are at. Cool. So what I would do is, like, if you're looking for a particular job, go down Seek, look at opportunities, but with the opportunities, you need to actually contact people and talk to those people that are advertising those jobs. Because you need to find out, first of all, is the job even real? It is, and no, to be honest, there are a lot of, and if, for example, right, even from, I guess, a perspective of, say there's Macquarie Bank, and they want to advertise a project manager. They've got 3 agencies working on that panel. That means there's 3 agencies that are going to advertise that same job. So it might look like there's 3 jobs, but in reality, there's actually only 1 job. And in saying that, and you guys might have heard it before, but there are a lot of agencies out there that may put up roles that actually don't exist. So if you're going to dedicate your time putting the effort into applying for these roles, you want to make sure you actually get some reward or get something out of it. So you actually need to contact the people and actually ask the questions. You actually need to ask what the job is, what are they looking for, and see whether you are relevant for that and what the next steps are. So that's kind of how I would really use Seek in terms of identifying opportunities. But the next step of what I would really do is actually, say I found a job at IBM on Seek, I would then go onto LinkedIn, and then I would try to identify within LinkedIn who in IBM would be recruiting for this role. And then from that, I would be then actively messaging or trying to contact that person to see if I can actually apply for that job outside of Seek and see what the best tactic is. So that's, I guess, ultimately kind of the different levels I'll do. But essentially, that is going to be a lot more proactive, and it's actually going to be a lot more targeted to, I guess, what you're looking for, as opposed to when you're going on Seek, it could be relying on, say a recruiter, right? So for example, you might be perfect for the job. Another 50 to 100 people have already applied. So what happens is that you might get a recruiter that goes, all right, I'm going to look at the first 20 applications, and I'm going to choose the top 3 from those applications. I don't care if the other 50 or the other 100 are even better. I'm just going to look at the first 20. You could be the 21st applicant in that job, and your resume hasn't even been seen yet. So that's the reason why I guess sometimes I would be a bit hesitant around Seek. Oops, not sure what happened there. Cool. So being proactive, that's kind of what I've touched earlier up on. So I guess when you're looking for work, one of the key things I also would recommend is reaching out to people, but being targeted and being specific about who you're going to target. So if you've gone to the effort of trying to identify who the best person to talk to is, reach out to them. You know what I mean? Like, the amount of times that people reach out to me on LinkedIn is actually quite refreshing. I'll actually make more of an effort if they've actually reached out to me asking for help, as opposed to just sending an email or just kind of going through the normal process. Again, it doesn't hurt to reach out to people, hence so that, and that's why the LinkedIn is there. There's a tool where you can message people and actually ask them out, I guess, to talk specifically about a role. Like, there's been one time, right? So I was actually mentoring a student, a uni student, literally just graduated, on how to find work, and he was struggling for about 6 months. Within about, I think, within 3 weeks, I got him to the point where he was actively approaching all his uni lecturers and sort of academics within his uni, asking him out for coffees to understand if he could get an RA position. And before you know it, 2 weeks later, he got a job within the university, which is quite hard to come by, especially with the amount of positions. But he was actually being quite proactive because, believe it or not, a lot of people aren't. It's very easy to just go onto Seek or go onto job boards or even on LinkedIn and just click apply. But it takes a bit more effort to actually reach out and contact someone. And then using agencies. So this is also an interesting part. I can 100% vouch for the company that I work for. We are very reputable and we have a lot of integrity. But in terms of that, the best way I would really recommend in terms of using agency is, first and foremost, if you've talked to someone from an agency, they need to meet you face to face. Who here has applied for a role and has been talking to an agency? Cool. How many of you have actually been, have they asked you out for a coffee or actually wanted to spend the time to get to know you?
50%.
Yeah. Otherwise, how many times have they talked to you about a job and then just called you for about 5 minutes and has never met you?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's the thing, right? If you're going to get someone that is going to help you find a role, but they haven't even taken the time to get to know who you are as a person or find out your skills, goals, or interests, or your motivations, how are you going to trust they're going to find the right job for you? So that's pretty much the number one, I guess, way I would kind of differentiate whether I would use an agency or not, is if they can take the time to get to know you as a person, because you want to create a partnership. You don't want it to be transactional to the point where they're going to call you up about a job. If you're not suitable for the job, they don't even call you back to give you feedback. Or they're going to call you about a job and then they're only going to call you up when it works for them. But it needs to be a two-way street, because essentially they need to help you, but you need to help them as well. So you need to build a relationship with the agencies if you are going to use them. So I would recommend just sort of picking and choosing who you use, but and then it's obviously open up to everyone. Okay. Cool. How are we going for time? Okay. All right. Cool. Still going okay. All right. I do apologize. I do have a bit of a monotone voice, guys. So please bear with me. I can already see someone sleeping right there. Okay. Cool. So in terms of interview preparation, cool. So we've got our tools, we've got our approach, we've got our strategy in terms of how we're going to look for the work, and we've engaged with it. So now we've got an interview. Yep. So we've got an interview now. So now we need to do the preparation. So preparation, the way I describe this, it's like a test, right? So if you fail a test, sometimes it's because you haven't done enough preparation, you haven't done the research. As long as you've done that, you give yourself the best opportunity. But with interviews, they're quite interesting. It's kind of like, as long as you can, I guess, and the reason why a lot of people fail in interviews is because they're not prepared. They don't know what they're going to get asked. They don't know what the questions are. They don't know what to expect. So what happens is when you're put in that situation, the initial reaction sometimes that you freeze up, and then you stutter, you say whatever the first thing comes into your head, and then it's downhill from there. So if you can, I've got some tips in terms of how you can prep it. So it's kind of like, if you know, imagine if you went to an interview and you knew exactly what questions they were going to ask. If you knew who the interviewers were, and if you knew what the agenda was, if you knew that, do you think you'd do better in an interview? You'd like to think so, right? Cool. So first of all, first things first, and it sounds quite funny, but it is researching the company. And not necessarily because, I guess, the websites on the companies are going to tell you everything, which they're probably not. But the funny part is there's a lot of interviews where the interviewers will literally ask as a trick, cool, so what do you know about us? And then some people go, you're a big organization and you're in the city. So, and again, that goes back to clearly you have not done anything to show that you've taken it seriously. So sometimes it's literally, they don't even care what you say in terms of what the company is. They just want to know if you've actually gone to the effort of looking at their website as a minimum and to see what research they've done. It could be in terms of, I guess with my wife, when I've told her in terms of looking for work, I've suggested that she looks up, articles about the company, so she can at least talk about the latest trends or, what big improvements have happened to that company, as opposed to just whatever you can get on the generic website. Search for interviewers on LinkedIn. It's a little bit stalkerish, but it's okay. And the reason why I'd recommend this is that you want to know who you're meeting. First of all, you want to be comfortable. You want to kind of see the people, visualize who you're talking to, so it's not such a big surprise. The other thing is, you actually want to see if there's any mutual connections. So again, it's going back to your LinkedIn. If you can go, hey, look, I'm actually meeting with someone, and we actually got a mutual friend who was actually one of my best friends. I can actually go to my best friend, hey, like, I'm actually interviewing with one of your guys, can you put in a good word for me? You know what I mean? It kind of goes back. But it's like, if you have mutual connections, that will play a big part as well. Attire. So, this one is pretty straightforward, but again, surprisingly, you'll get a lot of people that will fail in interviews because they did not make the effort to either properly dress appropriately, or it just, again, it shows back the effort, whether it comes from even being clean shaven, leaving a stubble on, combing your hair, or wearing the right attire. So that is something that's very important. So I'd highly recommend you put a bit of effort into that, because ultimately, first impressions count. And the biggest thing within this industry is that perception is reality. You know, like for example, you look at me now, right? I'm in a full suit and tie. I look like I'm credible enough to do this presentation at this point in time, right? Imagine if I wore what I normally wear on the weekend, which is, you know, a singlet, trackies, and a beanie. Would you take me as seriously? Maybe, but I'll probably say not. In terms of checking your location, that's something that's also quite important, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to go to an interview and go, all right, so I've got my interview at 2 o'clock today. You leave at 1:30, and then you realise you're in a city and the interview's in Parramatta. So obviously you're not going to have those situations, but you do not want to be freaking out last minute trying to figure out where it is, having no idea. You know, if you've got no clue how to work the GPSs within the CBD, you end up going in Clarence Street instead of, you know, some other street. So you want to make sure you at least do your research so you can also visualize where you're going to be and keep your mind at ease. Another one as well is looking at your own resume. So the thing is, you've actually updated your resume, you've gotten a job, and people forget to actually read their resume. So when they get in the interview, they'll go, all right, cool, so tell me about your work experience, tell me what you've done, and then they go, yeah, I kind of did this, or I kind of did that, and it's like, okay, so you don't even know your own resume. Did you actually write the resume yourself? Or, you know, again, it's something that's very simple and can be done quite quickly. And then thinking of potential questions. So this is the part, I'm going to be going a little bit more to this very shortly, but this is the part that if you think about it, it's not rocket science. It's quite, and this is something you can easily quite Google. I'm pretty sure if you can Google in terms of the type of role you're going for. So for example, say you're going for a project manager role. If you Google, you know, the type of questions that you'd be asked in a project management interview, I'm pretty sure you would get a list of them. If you don't want to do that, then if you have a job spec, you can figure it out from the job spec. As you, when you're going through with the job spec, they've got certain criteria that they want to kind of address and want to ask. So what you want to do is, there's certain traits, there's certain values, and there's certain aspects of the role that they are going to be asking about. So if we're going for a project manager role, one of the key things they're going to be talking about is, I guess, how you deal with, I guess, managing projects. So you would like to assume that they are going to be asking a question about that. So that's something where, you, as long as you, I guess, break it down into bit by bit, you can identify what type of questions you would actually ask. And then one of the other things in terms of, I guess, preparation is the SAW technique. So has anyone here heard about the SAW or the STAR technique? STAR? Okay. But SAW, not so much so. Cool. So SAW is actually it's relatively the same thing. Yeah, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain it now. So this is the part where I'm going to try and get a bit of crowd interaction. I'm going to hope this works. But is anyone, and look, ideally I'd like to get someone up on stage here to do a bit of a role play with me. So, is anyone here actually going for an interview within the next month? Next 4 weeks? We've got half a person there. Okay. Yep. Hi, what's your name?
April.
April?
Nice.
Nice to meet you as well. Cool. Everyone like to meet you? Thank you. So, I think it was I can stand up. You don't mind standing? It's good. Okay, cool. So April, so what I'd like to do is a bit of a, I guess essentially a role play in terms of some of the questions they may ask with interviews. So I'm trying to, I guess, show an example of how to prepare for it. So, cool. So this is the first time I've done it, so I do apologise, guys. We'll see how this goes. So April, what role are you going for?
It's a case assessor role in KPMG, and it's in the financial service industry. I'm not exactly sure who is the client, but probably one of the big four banks.
Okay.
Following all the Royal Commission scandals.
Okay. Lovely. That's really interesting. So case study.
So my role will be reviewing those statements of advice that's been provided to the client in the past years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Not a problem. So from that, I would imagine, I guess, one of the potential questions I may ask is potentially around your attention to detail. Would that be a fair assumption? Like in terms of, is that a relatively important part of your role?
Yeah.
If you're going to be doing case assessments, you're going to be analysing potential data. If it's got something to do with the Royal Commission, then you've got to be kind of on board, right? You can't really give too much, or you can't have information that's going to be incorrect.
It's more of a compliance nature, but also very technical, because you actually need to have the knowledge as an advisor in order to judge another advisor's product.
Okay.
Yes.
So compliance aspect. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question now. So I'm going to ask you a behavioural interview question.
Right.
And look, answer it as openly and as much as you would like. So in terms of I guess your role, can you tell me a time where you've had to deal with a compliance issue and how did you resolve it?
Right. So my current role involves proofread and reviewing the statement of advice. So it's kind of becoming my instinct and habit now to identify any potential compliance issues, fulfilling best interest duties in the statement of advice. So the principle of the practice will not present any advice to the clients before I double check them. So yeah, he puts a lot of trust on me, and I've been doing this for more than 3 years. So quite experienced in identify the issues and what might be potentially improved, what can be improved. And so, if that answers your questions.
Yes and no.
Right.
So in that instance, right? So and thank you for that as well, right? So obviously, I'll put you on the spot. You know, kind of get your thing
I'm
right.
not prepared.
Correct, right? Which is fair enough. But essentially, and I respect it because you're brave enough to come up. So thank you for that. And obviously, this will work without you. Essentially, so what we want to do is we want to kind of utilize what we call a SOAR technique.
Yep.
So SOAR technique, if you break it down, is the situation, the obstacles, the action, and the result. So if we were to use your example just then, the situation would be, first of all, where are you working?
I'm working in a financial service practice around CBD.
Okay, so the name of your company or you prefer?
CBD Financial Services.
CBD Financial Services. Okay, cool. So I guess in that question that I asked is like, can you tell me a time where you've had a compliance issue? So that would be your obstacle.
Right.
So for example, when was the last time you had, really quickly, when was the last time you had an issue?
Right, so we do have the obligation to submit some of our files to a vetting team, so a so-called a vetting process to validate the advice that we provide. So we get a lot of feedback from that, and usually, they're not going to say this is the perfect advice they've ever seen, so there's always going to be problems. So from that process, we'll learn from we'll identify what could be improved and what is the issue.
So it'd probably be issues, I guess, with either the communication piece or something around the process where they need to identify what the issue is and get it resolved quickly.
Yeah.
That potentially could be the issue.
Yeah.
So then
It's actually a back and forth process.
So it's a back and forth process, go back.
So until they approve our advice document, we are not allowed to present it to the client.
Okay, and that might be an obstacle, right? Because the client wants the documents, but it's getting held back, right? So action then would be, I say, potentially then working with that team to ensure that, look, if there is constant back and forth, how can we minimize or make it a bit more efficient? And the result then ultimately is that you get it resolved,
Right.
the client's happy.
Yep. Just in terms of the action, the step one always is, for me, clarify the issues.
Okay.
Sometimes the comments are pretty vague or of a general nature. So I would actually personally call the vetting team to clarify the issue, and that will facilitate the process a lot more.
Yep, cool. So I guess, and I'll probably do it, but I guess if we utilize the SOAR technique then for the example that I asked just then, so what I guess a potential way you could answer is that I guess the situation is that we've got a lot of I guess compliance documents and issues sort of that are kind of not being resolved within a quick period of time for our clients. The client is not happy, so therefore we need to resolve that. So the obstacle is the fact that between yourself and the team, there is a constant back and forth. So what I would then do is I would actually check the documentation, make sure what's correct, what's not correct, and talk to the people. And the result is that I get this resolved within the time frame, so the client is then happy.
That's right.
Yeah. So and as you can see, this ultimately it's kind of like utilizing the information that she has, but it's putting it in a bit more structure, and it's adding a little bit more objectives as opposed to, I guess, your initial first response where, again, you were trawling and first thing that comes to your mind, and then it gets to the point where sometimes you may have the people, I guess, potentially either losing attention or not knowing if you've actually answered the question.
Right. I guess if we put it in a straightforward way for you to understand it better, what I'm doing is probably like an internal auditor trying to apply for an external auditor.
Okay. Cool.
So, what advice would you give me?
No, not a problem. But no, for the sake of this, I guess, exercise, I really appreciate your answers, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, so in terms of that, I guess that's in terms of the SOAR response, what you want to do is you want to identify, I guess, what the main problem is and how you're going to resolve it with your answer. So you kind of want to get straight to the point, and you want to ultimately make sure you've highlighted what you've done in a concise way that shows that, okay, they know what we're talking about. So that's hopefully that example in terms of the SOAR response is kind of what we want ideally in an interview, because a lot of questions within an interview are behavioural-based questions, which will come down to that. Okay, cool. So that's interview prep. Do's and don'ts of interviews. So this one is, these ones might sound quite straightforward, but the reason why I put them up there is because they still happen on a day-to-day basis in 2019 on the 20th of May. Doesn't matter how many years of experience that we've got, it still happens. So these are the things that I would recommend in terms of do's. And again, they're not rocket science, they're not anything too outstanding, but they are straight to the point. So first of all is arrive 5 minutes beforehand. It is always good to arrive earlier, but it actually is quite not ideal to arrive too early. Say for example an hour early or half an hour early, and then you've called the interviewer, hey, I'm actually downstairs, and they're like, it's half an hour ahead, and they're still in a meeting or something. So they're feeling like they have to rush their current engagement because everyone's quite busy for time. So you want to make sure you don't actually put them in a situation where they're going to feel a bit obliged to either rush you, or they're going to get kind of annoyed by it. So 5 minutes is essentially the key thing. Like there is no, oh look, this person's half an hour early, therefore they're more eager. It's just 5 minutes is quite good. All right. So a firm handshake. This one's also very straightforward. It's kind of like when you go into, when you give a hand, there's a big difference between a wet sort of handshake where you kind of show it and a nice firm one. You don't want to crush their hand, but you want to at the same time show that at least you're there for business as well. Again, appropriate attire. So we had a guy once that asked, is it recommended if I wear a bow tie to the interview? We recommended against it, otherwise they thought this guy was trying to apply for a magician role or something like that. Positive body language. So again, this is something that can be changed quite quickly in terms of, there's a big difference to where I'm talking right now, where I feel like I'm relatively out back, or if I'm talking quite like this, quite closed and quite down, right? So you want to make sure you sit up straight, You don't want to be slouching. You don't want to be kind of, I guess, showing negative sort of body language. So keep it positive. And the other good thing about keeping upright is that you've got a clear airway. So when you're talking, you can actually talk quite properly. So speak clearly, have a good pace, and have a good tone. So those are things that you want to make sure, right? Because you need to make sure to actually listen to hear what you're saying. Maintain eye contact. So this one again is, I've literally had people go for interviews and they've lost the job because they spent the whole time talking up to the ceiling, or they were talking to the wall. So the interviewer felt they were actually having a conversation with the wall and they didn't really feel they were valued. And at the same time, it's kind of like, and again, you don't want to be staring at them to the point the whole time. So it gets a bit eerie, but you want to make sure you have regular eye contact and at least engage them, because it's kind of like, if I spent the whole time talking to these sort of glass panels, I think a lot of you get quite sort of bored. Be positive and sell yourself. So this one's actually quite interesting as well, right? Because there's a lot of people that are a bit more on the humble side. They want to be a bit modest. They don't want to be arrogant. So what they do is they do the reverse, and they end up being too submissive and not selling themselves enough. In the end, if you're going for a role, you're selling yourself in terms of, I'm confident enough that I can back my abilities and do the job that you want me to do. If not, I can learn and pick it up quickly so I can do the job you want me to. But you need to actually be quite positive and actually, otherwise what's the point in terms of if you're not going to sell yourself? This one is my personal favorite one, and I know a lot of people don't do it, is bring a pen and pad. So the thing is, so when I go for an interview, I will literally have my questions that I want to ask them in that pen and pad and bring it with me on them. And look, you can say to them, look, I hope you don't mind, but I like to take some notes or write things down as I go for the interview, because it shows that you're prepared. It shows that you're taking this quite seriously, and you want to record information within the interview that you actually want to look back and note down, because the whole interview process is quite daunting. There'll be situations where within an hour it all goes so quick, you've forgotten everything, and when you try to think about it afterwards, the first thing you do is you focus on all the negative parts, what you could have done better. But you want to actually have the information about the actual job, about the company in there. So, and then as I go through and I talk, I also write down questions. So at the end of it, I have things that I can ask them and stuff that I want to say in case if I forget. And then the last one is have questions prepared. By default, everyone is always going to ask you, cool, so do you have any questions for us? One of the worst things you probably could do is go, no, I'm good, and then thank you, and then that's it, you're off. You want to at least have one question, if not a few more, because the thing is, as much as you're going for a job, you need to know you actually want to go for that job, and you actually want that role. So it's kind of like you almost need to interview them to a degree. You can't take everything they say for face value, and you can't kind of let them dictate everything. So don't be scared to ask certain questions to identify whether this is the right opportunity for you. The don'ts. So counterproductive one. So be late. So definitely do not be late. If you are going to be late, at least notify someone. If there's a genuine reason why, that's fine. But at least give the courtesy of calling out as opposed to turning up 15, half an hour minutes late, and then it's kind of just say, I'm really sorry. Another one is do not lie and make up experience. Because ultimately you will get found out one way or another, whether it is they interview in the next round, say it's a technical role, they bring someone that's actually a technical expert in it. If they can find you out in this, you've pretty much dashed your chances. You're better off saying, look, I've never done this, or I haven't been exposed to this type of experience, but I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to pick up the stuff quickly. Being defensive. So again, there are going to be people that are interviewing that are going to kind of push your buttons. They're going to kind of attack you. But sometimes there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that will do that to see how you can handle pressure. So you've got to remember that you can't take it personal, and getting defensive won't help the situation, because if they see you defensive, they will keep picking and picking at you to the point where it's almost going to be you're going to walk out of that interview not feeling very happy and feel like you've actually been talking about that. Cool. In terms of apologies, I'm going to have to skip through a few of these, but the other key ones is not listening to the actual questions. In terms of that, the worst thing you do is when someone asks you something, you actually don't even answer the question. And the other one is talking over people. So talking over the interviews. That's one of the biggest pet hates from an interviewer's perspective. It's like, it's great that you're eager and you want to get the information across, but if you're talking over them to the point where they can't even get a word in, there's a good chance they're not going to be impressed. Okay, and yeah, so just some key general sort of things. Be yourself, ask the questions that you want, ask what the next steps are, nothing to lose approach, and we can send you slides later, so guys, if you are taking this, we don't have to write them all down. And then the last one is, nothing is guaranteed until the contract is signed. Because it's kind of like, you may have a company, you may have a place where you go, yep, you know, we want to get you on board, we want you to start on Monday. Great, cool. So you either go to your current job, see you guys, I'm out of here, you did a Homer Simpson trick, and you know, you just walk straight out, right? So, and the funny thing is on Monday they go, actually the role didn't get approved, so we gave it to someone else. So you want to make sure that until your contract is signed from both sides, then you can actually do things from that. Cool. And the last slide that I have is around tips, which is, these are some tips and random advice. In terms of time-wise, I think we're finishing up. Or? Okay, cool. So I'm going to leave these up here in terms of, these are just some general tips. But look, that's pretty much the end of, I guess, my presentation. So look, I'm open to, if we've got a bit of time, to do a few Q&As. So anyone have any questions? Yes? How do you build rapport quickly? Part of that is, I think there was actually a session here from PDF about how to build rapport quickly, so I think we can go back onto database for that. But if not, it's about, I guess, you as a person. You got to understand, like, there's going to be certain people that have the spectrum of introverts and extroverts, and certain people that are going to be a bit more shy. But you've got to remember, if you're going for a job interview, you do not have a very big amount of time to build that rapport. So part of it is your attitude and mentality. You've kind of got to be open to going, yep, if I'm going for an interview, I've got to get out of my comfort zone and try at least, try open up a bit more, or I guess one easiest way is trying to find something in common. So if I'm interviewing people, I like to loosen up, I guess make them feel a little bit comfortable. So what do you do on the weekend? Oh, I was watching a footy game. Okay, cool. So you're watching footy, what team do you support? Oh, I support this team. So you kind of build a bit of rapport through that. Something in common, some commonality, or something, I guess ultimately that is you're quite passionate about. Generally, I like to ask people what they like for their hobbies, because therefore they're generally going to be open and talking a bit more about their hobbies than say something else. So that's something you can kind of talk and show a bit more of your passion in that sense. It's kind of quick ways around building rapport in that context. But ultimately, you need to be open to kind of talk to them as quick as possible, because sometimes if it gets too late, if you're quite shy or a bit reserved, before you know the interview's over and it's too late. Cool.
You mentioned about some job advertisement might not be real, and
yep.
How do you find out that?
Ask questions.
Right.
Cool. So tell me what the company is. How much is it paying? Where's the location? Basic questions. I would literally drill down to the questions. Do you have a job spec for this role? Do you have more details? Can you send me some information?
For example, the example you gave, that there are 3 agencies,
Mm-hmm.
but there's only one role, and then in the end, even if I passed the interview, but then role disappeared.
Okay.
How do you prevent that from happening?
Well, sometimes it's quite tricky, right? But I guess, again, it goes back to asking the right questions and doing your due diligence with those agencies or the people to ensure that, is this the same role that I'm actually going for? Because it's kind of like, you've got 2 agencies working on the same role. If you haven't asked the agencies which is that, you could be going for the same role, but you don't even know it yet. Again, it's just asking the basic questions: who's the company for, where it's located, and it's kind of like, okay, is this the same role? Because it sounds quite similar to something I'm going for. But you just need to ask the questions out there. Oh, yeah, hello.
So the best times to look for work and time.
Yes.
Give us some more details.
Yes, best time to look for work. So I'm talking more about from a year perspective, right? So how the year works is that there's peaks and troughs. Right now, we just had the election that gone by, so that has affected the government industry quite a fair bit. In a few weeks' time, you're going to have the end of financial year, which means that there's potentially going to be less opportunities on the market because companies are going to be holding their budgets and they're going to be assessing them. So what I mean by that is that, like for example, let's go from a calendar year. You're talking about essentially January. In January, everyone's still on holidays. Australia loves their holidays, so you're going to have a lot of clients that are not coming back, or people not coming back from the holidays until at least the 2nd or 3rd week of January. So you can almost think about the opportunities will be quite fun for you at that period of time. So you're looking around February, March, April. So that's when everything should start ramping up. And then when you get to sort of May and June, it will slowly die down because of the end of financial year. And then after the financial year, 30th of June, what will then happen is that the companies have allocated their budget, so they're going to start hiring people. They're going to start putting money into it. So then what you're assuming is that within that sort of July period, it's going to start ramping up again. And then as you go July, August, September, around October time, so it gets done. November's towards Christmas. People already started thinking about their holidays. People have taken leave. December, right off, right? So that's your kind of peaks and troughs in the sense, if you're going to be looking for work, there's certain times where there's the best opportunity. So right now, as it stands moving forward, I would recommend if you are looking for work, your best chances within that sort of July to sort of September, October period. Because if you get to November, it's going to get to a situation where potentially there is not going to be work, and you might as well have a break until, say, January or February next year, if that makes sense. Correct. And obviously it depends, but that's just the general, that's a general kind of rule, like 100%, depending on the industries. Yep.
You mentioned earlier in the accounting and the finance industry.
Okay.
What are the key attributes you guys look for?
And within accounting and finance?
Attributes you look for?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest, that's not my area of expertise. It's predominantly IT. But if you're looking at accounting and finance, it depends on obviously the specific stream and what type of role you're going for. So are you studying accounting and finance? And your uni still? Okay, cool. So again, it goes back to what particular, I guess, degree or what sort of area of accounting and finance you're looking into, and then you can break down what specific skill sets. So I can give you sort of vague stuff in terms of, and that's gonna, like the answer I can give is probably across everything, right? Good communication skills, attention to detail, how you can, I guess, work within team environments. Are you good with numbers? You know, so those are kind of basic things, but until I know what specific skill set, then it's going to be hard to kind of give an answer in that sense. Sorry. Yep. Hi.
So Patrick, thanks a lot for the presentation. I enjoyed it a lot. Now regarding reaching out on LinkedIn, so 3 things I would like to hear from you. First, do you apply the job first, then you reach out to certain people, or you reach out to them first, and then you apply once you get them?
So that's a really good question. My advice would be generally to reach out to them before you've applied. Okay. And the reason why I say this is because if you so for example, say you've applied for the job, right? So my name's Patrick, right? So the person now has a CV of Patrick Wong in their inbox. They're either going to potentially read it, think I'm not suitable, and then ignore it. Or they're not even going to look at it, right? So for example, if you try to approach them and then they keep saying the name Patrick, right? They may think you're going to start bugging them, but they've already got your CV, so they've already got the impression of you. What I'd recommend is you actually reach out before, because first things first is you want to find out, again, what the opportunity is, what they're looking for, what the criteria is. Like, for example, it might be a role that is only paying, you know, for example, 20K, it might be paying 20K less than what I actually want. So there's no point applying for it, right? So if you can get all that detail, then you can go, all right, cool, so this is a role that I'm interested in. What do you recommend I do next? Would you like me to apply for the job, or can I send you my resume directly? And that gives them the option that go, cool, look, right, you can send it to me directly because I'm really interested. It sounds like there's a good match, so send it to my inbox straight away and we can have a chat. The alternative is they can go, look, just apply for the job, but at least now they know who you are. You're now a person, you're not a number on a resume. So when they go through the resumes, they'll say, oh, look, Patrick's, that's the guy I talked to. Okay, cool, let me have a look at his resume a bit more and then let me look into it more. So that's why I always recommend ideally trying to approach them first before you've actually applied for the job. And that way, you can, again, it goes back to whether you want to put your time in to actually apply for the job.
And so, I suppose the recruiter within the HR department would be your first point of contact, right? So you want
not necessarily. It could be the specific line manager or the person that's actually hiring the role, because they're essentially going to be the decision maker, and then you have HR people that might organize the process. So this is the part where I can get into semantics, but ultimately, and again, it's trying to find out who the best person is to talk to.
It's true.
Yeah.
So what lines would you use a specific person?
So for example, just really quickly, say you're a technical person. So for example, say I'm in IT and I'm doing Java, right? So that's a technology. I could be then looking for the Java team leader within that company and then approach them. Hi, by the way, you're a team leader within the Java space. Do you actually get involved in the recruitment? And try from there. Cool. Hi.
When you go through agency, after the interview,
Yep.
agent most likely to call you back to get details of the interview.
Yep.
And probably they will pass on to the next candidate.
Yep.
So what should you do? Should you pass exact detail?
It's a good question actually, because it's to be honest, it's really up to you how comfortable you feel with that, right? Because then again, it goes back to a partnership with you and the agency. To be honest, we do that, right? But in saying that, you've got to understand, ultimately, it can help people, because obviously they've got to do a step up, but at the same time, you like to think the agency in the first place would give you enough preparation, work with you on the training, to make sure that if you were to say the first person, and there's 2 other people interviewing, that they would give you enough prep to answer the questions. Ultimately, it can make a little bit of difference, but ultimately it's up to you how much you want to divulge, and then up to you, like, I guess, with your agency to make sure that they can give you the right information as well. If they're going to give you vague information prior to that, then you've got to ask them and put it back on the table. It's like, hey, I'm going for an interview. You need to give me everything I need to know, otherwise I might not get the job. You know what I mean? And you need to put the onus back onto them and take control of that. Otherwise, if they're going to dictate it like that, then unfortunately you are going to be bound by the way they kind of run it. Oh, yes? Hi. Yes.
Hi, Pat. I'm asking for a friend. So how would you
Yeah.
each time we're asked to go for an interview, I'm talking about overseas interviews, you get rejected, and the reason they give you is you're very close to one person at the time, but you never respond. So what would be some of the things that could have gone outside of interviews?
So you're asked. So guys, she was just asking in terms of if you're going for multiple interviews and you're getting the same feedback about you were just close, what you can do to work with that and something a bit more constructive.
You ask for feedback, you're really good at just
Cool. Then if you're going to ask for feedback, then ask specifically then about, I guess, was it, for example, the way I answer the questions? Is it, I guess, you know, for example, it could be anything. It could be like in terms of, was my presentation okay? Try and break it down a little bit more in terms of, rather than just saying, give me feedback. First of all, you do need to get feedback, but if they're going to give you vague feedback, you need to ask them a little bit more structured, and again, put on them. But yeah, in terms of that, it is a little bit tricky as well, because it is dependent on the agency or people. Oddly enough, they don't like giving negative feedback, but really, it's quite funny. I think most people appreciate constructive feedback if they can get it to learn, and that's what you need to try to tell them is, hey, look, the reason why I'm asking for this feedback is I need to learn. If I'm going for multiple jobs, but I'm missing out, is there something I can do better? So again, you need to put it back and try word it in a way that it actually gets to the point where it helps you. Cool. Alright.
Yeah, so as a recruiter, how do you feel about someone drop by your office and draw off the hard copy resume?
To be honest, I don't know. It's quite funny. We do get people that do that. If you want my honest opinion, it's probably not advisable. Because again, it goes back to, are they, you're kind of assuming that, again, look, if people have time, then they will make time. But sometimes it's like you get a situation where everyone's quite busy, we've got priorities, and then all of a sudden there's someone waiting at the desk that hasn't made the time to book it in. So if someone really wants to do that, I'd recommend that they at least call, but if they're going to be there, to suggest another time they can come catch up, as opposed to just going there expecting that they're going to be seen straight away. Hi.
Some people say you should take a presentation to the interview. You need to summarize who you are,
in terms of those situations, if you really want to, you can bring it, but I would not show it unless they've actually asked. Because you're assuming they want to see it and they might not be interested, so you're going to spend the next 10 minutes showing them all this presentation about you, and then they're not even paying attention. So if you really want, you can bring it offshore, but again, you have to kind of read them and see whether they actually want to see it or not. But otherwise, we generally don't bring it. And we generally don't ask for it. Unless we've asked something specifically that you need to bring, then we kind of don't bring it ourselves. Hi. Yeah, so in terms of her question, it was kind of like reaching out to people on LinkedIn that you don't know. What's the best way to approach? To be honest, again, ideally, if you can utilize your mutual connections, if you do have any, go from there. You kind of want what we call sort of like warm sort of connections. So 6 degrees of separation, right? So people or something in common, or literally just be honest. Just say, hey, look, I found your details on LinkedIn. This is my situation. I was wondering if you can help me out. There's nothing wrong with just saying the truth. Just being straight to the point, no bullshit, we don't need to fluff it. Just say, look, this is my current situation, I'm looking for work, I'm in a niche industry where it's quite hard to find. Are you able to help me, or is there a situation where you can direct me in the right way? Yep, questions?
Yeah, sorry,
Jeff?
I can't let you get away with these easy ones. I have to give you a hard one.
Okay, is this where the camera's off now?
Yeah, I can cut it out later.
Okay.
So I think this lady over here asked the question around, you keep coming back and you keep getting rejected and you don't really know why, right? And there are times where you get given feedback that you know is pretty much bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you know that the feedback that you're being given is true? And here's the other one that you're probably going to hate, but in this ANU study a couple of years ago, people with Asian names gets rejected. You have to send 1.7 more times resume just to get the interview, right? So is that true from your point of view? With experience, and if you've got an Asian name, how do you get around that?
Sure. Sorry, the time was up, right? Okay, cool. Double barrel question. Let me think. Let me get the easy one first. In terms of, I guess, the Asian demographic, look, you guys can Google it and assess it yourselves, but there are surveys and there are studies that found that people with the same resume but with different names do get treated differently. But that's something that's kind of, you can look it up and see the studies for yourself. The way I kind of see that is, look, there's a few things, right? So I recommend, and this is subjective, and this is up to everyone, right? But I guess in this day and age, it doesn't hurt to have I guess essentially an English name. And it's up to you whether you want to put it up or not on the CV, right? So I've got a Chinese name. I'll be honest, I never use it for my resume. That's just a fact. And I won't use it for my if I'm applying for work. So I'll just keep it at Patrick Wong, right? If not, there are ways to get around it, right? Because obviously there are some stigmas and some things behind it. So if you want, you can put, for example, potentially your education, and people can see that, hey, look, I've been, high school here in Sydney for the last 15 years or something like that. In terms of getting the feedback, that one is a tricky one, right? Because it goes back to what it kind of goes back to as well, which is kind of like a double-edged sword, and I'm kind of going around the question, I don't know if I'm going to answer it. But essentially, it's a situation where you've got to be true to yourself and know where your expectations, your capabilities, where you can improve and what your gaps are. So for example, right, I was literally hired as a career coach for one of my companies. So what I did was literally spend my time coaching people on how to progress their careers and all that stuff. So for example, I had one guy that was a developer, did not talk to anyone. His communication skills were actually pretty average, and then he said to me, as part of my career, I want to be a manager, right? So in that example, I'll be honest, I don't think he would ever get a job as a manager if he stayed the way he did. So the feedback I had to give him was, look, if you want to be a manager, if you're here to here, these are the gaps and these are the things that you need to improve on. So first of all, one is communication. So you need to improve in that in terms of how you articulate yourself to your clients, to your team lead, or to your team members or the people around you. You need to be a team player. So you actually need to work with the team, because ultimately if you're going to manage them, you've got to work with them. So you can't have it both ways. And then the other one is that if you're going to get promoted, you need that experience. So you need to figure out a way how you can show leadership values or get those qualities, so when you apply for that job, you can actually get them. And then that will help alleviate some of the gaps that might be as to reasons why people are not necessarily going to give you the feedback that you want. But in terms of, I guess, asking the people, you've got to be straight up and ask them, look, I need to improve. What can you tell me so I can get jobs, right? Because ultimately, the reason why I got into recruitment was essentially to help people. So it is in my best interest to help people when I can by giving them the best information and the most constructive feedback. Hope that answers that to a degree. Cool. Last question. Hi.
You've mentioned a lot
Cool. So in terms of salary negotiations, it depends on the context. If you're dealing with a representative, like a recruiter or someone, you talk about the salaries with your recruiter. You don't talk about it with the client. If you're going directly with the client, I would highly recommend you talk about salary at some point within that first interview. Yeah, because at the same time, you need to be aware of, I guess to a degree, how much the role is actually paying. Because, for example, say your expectations are 70K, the role is only paying 50K. What is the point of going through 5 interviews for them at the end to go, hey, we've offered you a job, here's 50K. And it's kind of too late to a degree to negotiate as well. So you need to be upfront in terms of, and it's a way of how you ask it. You don't need to be aggressive, you don't need to be pushy, but you just put it out there. How much is this well paid? Just ask them. Straightforward. Yeah, that's what I'll do. If not, you do it before you even go to interview, like to say, look, okay, cool, so you're calling about interview, you want me to come on Thursday at 2 o'clock, cool, what are the details? How much is this well paying? That's a fair question to ask. And again, you're not being arrogant, and you can interpret it from there. So that's how I would probably approach it. Cool. Okay, cool. I think I've been called. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time. I hope you've gotten something out of it.
Thanks, Patrick. That was really informative. So for anyone who is either looking for jobs or is an employer, feel free to grab a business card. So Patrick works at Tech Systems, so anyone, especially in the IT industry, hit him up, or I'm sure he can pass on the links to someone within his company. I'd like to give a token of appreciation for Patrick for his time. And if anyone's around, feel free to network, but we do need to pack up, so we'd appreciate if you could grab your chair and bring it to this side. Oh, sorry.